Rhythm section, the way it came about is I was stalking Reed Morano, our director, and I was actually trying to get her to do another film of mine, and they told me that she was entirely unavailable, that it's not worth it. I called her agents and I said, please just like take a meeting with me, and they said, okay, she can meet tonight at 10:30 p.m. And they knew I lived 2 hours away from where it was, so they would just gave me like an impossible sort of goal, and I was like, okay, I'll be there. And they said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'll be there. So I met her at this like random restaurant outside of her house at 10:30 at night one night, and I begged her to do my movie. And she was she was meant to do another movie instead, and we instead spent the entire night talking about this script that she was obsessed with called The Rhythm Section. She wasn't hired as the director. I had never even heard of it. And we both left the meeting wanting to make The Rhythm Section instead. But the problem was we weren't hired. Barbara Broccoli had no idea who either one of us were. So then I became obsessed with finding this script, and I tracked it down. And she didn't tell me the name of the script. She didn't tell me it was called The Rhythm Section. She just described the story. She described the character. She said it was the producers of Bond. And I knew that that meant Barbara Broccoli, who I had just heard the best things about my entire career. Everybody said not only does she make such incredible movies, but she's such a great person, and she has such incredible taste, and she's just so kind and humble and just like the best of the best. So I'd always wanted to work with Barbara for that reason. So I read the script and loved it, obviously. And then I begged Barbara to meet me, and I called Reed and I was like, listen, I know you're doing another movie and I'm supposed to be doing another movie. Let's be honest, neither one of us want to be in those relationships. So let's do this movie instead. If Barbara's willing to hire us both, would you want to go in together and say like, look at this, you got both of us? And she was like, yes, I would love to make this movie with you. So she met Barbara that weekend, I met Barbara that weekend, and we just sort of like, you know, begged her to hire us both as a you know, she didn't have anybody attached to the movie, and now she would have two, like lucky her. And she fell for it, which is incredible. And so that's sort of how it came to be. The way she described the film is it's a film about a female assassin, yet you never, in movies when you see female assassins, or any assassin, they're always slick, you know that they're gonna succeed. There's something very like sexualized, and violence has a lot of like glamour and cool to it, where this film, violence is violence. Like when they're always taking human lives in films without any sort of regard for it. And this is a movie where you see that every human being, no matter how good or bad they are, like everybody is fighting for what they believe is right or what they believe is noble. And it's not so black and white. And when you take a human life, there is that's the human being. I mean, there is real consequence, there is real pain, there is real conflict, even if that's your goal to do that. It's never just this easy thing that you walk away from. And becoming an assassin is really bleeping hard. I've never seen a film that had such humanity in this genre, so that's the reason that I really wanted to be a part of it, on top of the fact that, you know, Reed is such a brilliant filmmaker I was such a fan of, and Barbara as well. Barbara is the person who like always puts everyone else before herself. She's always handing water bottles out to the crew, and not just water bottles, but like really yummy snacks that she goes and picks up. She's so maternal and so loving and so caring and so kind and so humble, yet she's the exact person that the quote, "Don't mistake kindness for weakness" would be about, because she shows that you don't have to be tough or rude or sort of superior in order to be respected, because that's the sort of thing that like women face a lot, where in order to exist in a man's world you need to really like put on this sort of guard where you're a lot more hardened, and she is the most soft, loving, maternal human, but she is so the leader of that set, and she's such a powerhouse, and her taste is incredible. And I think by respecting every single member of the cast and of the crew, doesn't matter if they're a department head or if they're, you know, an assistant that's on their first job, everybody has the same level of respect. So everybody's happy to be there. Everybody's giving their best. And it really does come from the top down. And so it's just such a beautiful environment to be on, to be in a set, and everybody's doing their best work because they feel like they're valued. So that was really neat to experience that. Reed, it was really cool to not only work with, you know, it's rare to work with female filmmakers. I mean, I've been doing this for 16 years and I've worked with only one female director on a film, and my show that I was on for 7 years, I think there were only two or three female directors ever. So it's out of, like, you know, dozens. So so it's incredible to have worked with a female filmmaker who is, you don't define her by, like, this is a female filmmaker, this is a male filmmaker, because she is just like, she's a DP. She's the most incredible shooter. Like, I mean, you look at the photos that she takes, you look at the frames that she captures, but she's really like living with you and in the moment. And it was interesting because Sean Bobbitt, who's our director of photography, is iconic. He needs no introduction. But it was neat to see she's a DP before she was a director. So them working together was actually a really beautiful thing as well, because she very much responds to the actors and their performances. So she doesn't just set the shot and then capture the scene. Like, she's alive in the moment. And Sean is also that way, and they both have their own instincts, yet so their own instincts would take over in a scene, yet they would cross over in other ways as well. And it was really neat to, as an actor, to feel like you were almost in a scene with them, because Reed would operate the camera sometimes as well. So sometimes it would be Sean and sometimes it would be Reed. And normally you're just in the scene with your co-star, but when you have a DP who's so alive and so a part of it and capturing things that are maybe not according to plan, they're capturing things in the moment, you also have them almost as a scene partner, because they're helping to tell the story in other ways, like filming your hands when they're supposed to be filming your face, but if your hands are doing something that's more emotional or telling the story more, that's what they're going to capture. So you feel a lot more alive as an actor when you have a director who's also filming moments and capturing that. And she's just like so cool. I just like want to be her. But she's really great, and she's a great actor's director too. She gave some of the best acting notes I've ever experienced, not just for me, but I watched things that she'd say to my co-stars, and she would just say something that was a really strange, interesting note, and then I would see the next take, and she just found that in all of us. Like she pulled really interesting performances out of everyone, I think. This is the most grounded, authentic film I've ever read in the genre, or seen, obviously, now that it's made. But this film is completely unlike the genre, because it doesn't have any of that slick nature to it. It's still sexy, it's still fun, there's still action, but there's such humanity to it. And this genre normally doesn't have humanity. It's almost like a superhero genre. So for her to tell the story with such humanity, that's really what Reed brought to the table. And that's something that resonated so much with Barbara, because she is just like, you know, a living, breathing heart. Like, she's just so soulful that I think that's why she really connected with Reed. That's why I connected with Reed, and that's why I think this film is so special, because you don't watch this movie and then suddenly by the second act she's amazing she's bad at killing, and then she's great at it, and then she's like putting on, you know, stockings and hose for the next, you know, third act while pulling guns out and like killing people in a really flashy way. It's always very grounded and very real and raw, and you never know if she's going to make it scene by scene. And that's actually what it would be like, because she really is just a normal human being who was thrown into this life and thrown into this world. And like, if any one of us had to be an assassin, what would that be? And so I think that it was just really interesting storytelling, and that's what Reed, I think, offered. It's fun to see the superhero movies or the action thriller movies where, you know, it is more glossy and fun. That sort of thing is fun. This is just not that. This is this is real, like, character based and humanity based. And I think that that's something that's neat to see in this day and age, to see women telling other women's stories in a way that's really grounded and real. And it doesn't mean that it's a movie by women for women, because we've watched movies about men for decades and we love them, so it's not like, only, one group of people can connect with this film. But I think it's a really cool movie. And I do think I think the fact that it's more real and grounded makes it sexier in a way. Like, there's something a little bit more like dangerous and real with that comes with the rawness. I think when you're telling a story about a woman, having women surrounding that film is important. So between, Barbara Broccoli, Reed Morano, our costume designer, Emer, Liz Raposo at Paramount, these are all women who have different experiences that they can bring to the table. There's also men who made this film who brought so much to the table with their own experiences. So I think that it's just nice to see that, it's nice to see the pendulum swing a little bit where women are getting more opportunities. This is really important to us as women to say, like, this isn't just like a sexy female object. She's a prostitute. Now she's killing people. It's to say, look at this life of pain. Look at this woman whose society completely wrote off. She was somebody who had her life together, by and large. She had a real tragedy and couldn't bounce back from it. And society just wiped their hands of her. And every single human being has value. And every single human being, if you invest in them, respect them, you give them an opportunity, they can do something beautiful with their life, whether it's big or small. But it just really goes to show what society does to people who they deem no longer humans, which is just really awful and sad. And so it was important to tell this story of, someone who is a drug addict and a prostitute in a way that is more authentic to how it really plays out versus the movie version. The movie doesn't go too much into her backstory because I think, because this is a story, this is the most authentic sort of movie of this type of genre. We wanted the audience to feel like this could be you. And if this could be you, you don't want to be too specific with her backstory because you want people to sit in the theater and go, oh my God, if this happened to me, like, I could, if I was in a car chase, this is actually how I might drive the car. If I was faced with having to avenge my family and shoot someone, could I actually pull that trigger when I'm looking at somebody in the eyes and I'm seeing their veins and I'm seeing their hands and I'm seeing that they're an actual flawed human being, So it's like we wanted the audiences to really be able to put themselves in her shoes. So it's just sort of like an abstract touching on her backstory. But she's somebody who had a brother and a sister. She had parents, and they were meant to fly together, and she didn't fly with them, and their plane crashed. And so she really holds a lot of responsibility and guilt for her family going. And it's probably something that she got into drugs initially. She's just a college student in a middle-class family, but she probably got into drugs just to sort of cope with the pain, to numb herself a little bit. She loses her family and, she falls into drugs and eventually prostitution to pay for her drugs. And then she finds out that the family's plane crash wasn't an accident. A journalist comes to her. And this is sort of the thing that prompts her the entire story that you see. And it's almost like, this film is almost like an origin story, but if an origin story was a real life origin story versus a superhero origin story. So this was one bit of information, and this person who tells her, this journalist, being kind to her and treating her like a human being, really goes a long way and reminds her of who she is. So she goes on a mission to find out what that means. If it wasn't an accident, who did it and why? I don't think she goes off to avenge her family with the thought that she'll actually succeed. I think she just thinks, well, I'm gonna go out trying. She barely survives each time. And I think that that's what I connected with so much about this film, is that like if I were in a car chase for my life, I would not be doing really impressive tricks, but I would drive like my life depended on it. And maybe, who knows, I would make it out, you know, alive, and maybe not. But I think that that's, she doesn't have the confidence of knowing that she'll make it out alive each time because she doesn't have the skills to do it. She does train with Boyd, played by Jude Law. He's somebody who has connections to this whole world. She finds his name as somebody who may be able to help. She doesn't know how or why. And he's ex-MI6, and she just basically harasses him until he'll, she has nowhere else to go. So, you know, she just makes her his problem. She makes herself his problem, and he I think trains her a little bit to get her off of his back. Also, he's just really lonely. He lives in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, so I think this is a guy who, like, you know, he's a curmudgeon, but he's sort of like, I think, secretly happy to have a little bit of company. He helps her out and gives her enough skills to where she can, you know, at least try to avenge her family. He doesn't hold back. Nobody in this movie holds back. So there's no hand holding. There's no like really great training montage. Well, there is a training montage because you can't have this type of movie without a training montage. But it's not like the traditional one that you would see. I mean, he's very brutal, and so, you know, he locks her in a room until she detoxes, and he makes her prove her worth each time. So what I liked about this film is he wasn't the person empowering her. He was the person who's saying, you're not good enough, you're not gonna do this. And she had to say, no, I am. I have to show you. So each time she had to go, he kept discounting her and her value. And maybe it was a tactic, or maybe he actually believed it. I think it was probably a bit of both. And so it was up to her each time to show her worth, rather than this man giving her her worth by giving her some sort of tools. And I think that that's what's different about this sort of training montage, or this relationship, is it's her proving to him each time, like, do not discount me, and do not like write me off like you think you know me. Like, I am a human being, and I'm powerful, and I will succeed, and like, f you for thinking otherwise. I think in order to go there, her mindset would have had to have changed. Like, I don't think she would have wandered into the, you know, rolling hills of the Highlands, not without a level of like, determination and perseverance. I think that, you know, her family dying in a plane crash, being a freak accident, there's nothing you can do about it except punish yourself because of her part in it. But when she finds out that there is someone else to punish other than herself, I think she's just so desperate to share in that punishment. I think she wants someone else to feel the pain that she's feeling. So that's really what changes her. If anybody changes her perspective, it's Proctor, who's played by Raza Jaffrey, who was just such beautiful casting, because he is living, breathing empathy. He is so kind, and he is so human. And if anything Reed did, any way that she directed him, it would be just like, be less lovely, because he's just like so warm and lovely. But he's somebody who, as a journalist, made it his mission in life to expose this truth. And he had really no one else to turn to, and was sort of out of leads. So he just, you know, starts exploring victims. And when he comes across Stephanie and sees where she came from and where she's been, he just, I think it pulled at his heartstrings a bit, and there's nobody really that he can tell what's going on, but he felt like he owed it to her, because she really is, and he says this in the movie, she's another victim. She just happened to survive because of the way it uprooted her life. She is a victim of this. So I think that he's the real, other than Stephanie, I think that Proctor is the real hero of this movie. Jude was really fun to work with, mainly because we had this, you know, our scenes as actors is one thing. You have to have a certain level of trust and comfortability with someone, but we had to do a fight scene in this film that was one take, and it was probably like, I think it's like a 3-minute fight. And the exciting part is that like actors don't normally do their own stunts, but you know, to this extent for the entire fight scene, you would do parts of it that you see your face, and then the really athletic parts, you'd have someone else do it. And then also you don't normally see a fight scene that's actually one take. You'll see them in movies where they fake them, where they like stitch it together. So, you know, it looks like it's one shot, but they've actually, you know, edited it in a way where it looks like one shot, but it's not actually one shot, one take, almost like a play. And so we had to do this fight scene together. And so the level of like trust it takes to do that is something that's, you know, really, really intense, because you're not just fighting with the choreography like a dance, you're also having to act in the scene, and it's just a really vulnerable situation to be in. So it was, I think that was something that, that we were both nervous about and excited about, and had such like respect for each other the whole time, because we had to do this thing. We had to like beat the crap out of each other. But it was really neat, and we actually, we did it, which was terrifying. And it's the thing that I'm most proud of in the movie, is that scene with Jude. I think his character's really an important character, because he carries a level of guilt and responsibility for the things he's had to do. And he's somebody who's MI6. So normally you see, again, MI6, they're doing things without regard because that's their job, where he's somebody who understands that it's not black or white, that everybody really is fighting for what they believe is right. And even the side that's the good side is doing awful things. So it's like there is no good side, there is no bad side. Everybody's just, everyone's a human being, and the cost of life in this profession, which is crazy that it's a profession, but the cost of life is so high, and so he carries a lot of like responsibility and humanity in that. And I think that even though he's like sort of cold and steely, I think that you see that, and that's it's fun. And he's also like really funny. I think the loneliness from him living up in the mountains by himself in this tiny little house has made him lonely. So he's like, the scenes with him, I think, are kind of funny and fun, even though they're very intense, because he's just like so excited to have like somebody to play with. So I think that there's like there's a sweetness to it because of that. Mark Serra is an information broker, and he is somebody who, if anybody has ties to the person I'm looking for, it would be him. And he's somebody who lives in Madrid. He's ex-CIA, so he was somebody who, like Boyd, who was in MI6, he was working for an organization who thought they were doing good, and then became disenfranchised by seeing the fact that, you know, everybody's, you know, sort of playing God. And so he's just become an information broker, and he'll sell anything to the highest bidder, because he feels that that's what governments are doing anyway. And so he's somebody that I have to get close with in order to find out the thing I'm looking for. But also my character Stephanie is not being honest about who she is. She's posing as a different assassin named Petra Reuter. And so everybody's sort of, it's a cat and mouse with Serra, because you don't know who knows what. And so the scenes with him were always sort of like fun and interesting and dynamic. And he's just such a brilliant actor, because his eyes are just like so soulful, and he's so present, and he's so there with you. He's just like one of the best scene partners I've ever had. So I felt really, really fortunate to be able to work with him. Tawfiq Baram, who plays Reza, he's sort of the he's one of the characters in the movie who I'm looking for. But I think what's really important about this movie that differentiates it is Tawfiq is not someone who has any ties anywhere. He's a kid who's, you know, going to college, who is really just a kid who's into tech and engineering. I mean, he makes bombs, but what this movie does is it sort of breaks down the fact that, like, one government thinks what they're doing is noble, another one thinks what they're doing is, everybody thinks what they're doing is noble, and it just breaks down the fact that, like, you know, everybody is doing things that are really wrong and dangerous and bad, and there is no clear right and wrong. The car chase, maybe it's my favorite scene in the movie. I've never seen this in a movie, but Reed wanted to keep the camera and the audience in the car with her. So if you'll notice in this movie, the way that Reed shoots and the way that Sean Bobbitt shoots the movie is that the audience is trapped with Stephanie. So you're, as an audience member, you're not watching this movie just like sitting back with your popcorn and Milk Duds and just enjoying the show. You feel like you are the character. And that was intentional, that you were like, you're uncomfortable for most of the movie because it's like, if you were thrown into this, how would you feel? So you are so with the character, you're living with her as her. So when you're in the car chase, what we're used to seeing in car chases is like big, great wide shots of cars spinning out and the other cars crashing and the things that they're avoiding, where Reed said, I want to stay with you in the car the entire time, and I want it to be one shot. So the camera's in the car with me, and it's something that, unless you hear this ahead of time, you may not realize why you felt so tense. You were just like, oh, that was a really intense car chase. But what sets it apart is that the camera is in the car the entire time. So from the moment I jump in that car to the moment the car chase is over, you were trapped with her. So it was a real like athletic event for so many people involved. Sean Bobbitt, who's having to capture me, capture the things that I'm avoiding back to me. And the timing, no matter how much you choreograph it, it's still, you've got explosions, you've got gunshots, you've got cars, you've got stunt people, you've got so many things that you're trying to capture and then avoid. Our driver, who's actually driving the car, so it looks like I'm driving the car, but there's actually a pod, I'm in a pod, it's a car, but they've rigged it like a pod, so there's a driver on top of the car in like this seat, and he's got a helmet on, and he is actually controlling my wheel. So I had to do driving courses in order to learn how to do defensive driving and sort of like, you know, high speed, high impact driving, so that I would be moving the wheel appropriately, so that my instincts were right. But I actually had no control of the wheel, which is terrifying, to get into a car that's driving at top speed towards other cars and people and trucks and crates and crashing into them, but having no control of the gas, the brakes, or the wheel itself. It is terrifying. I'm screaming, I look terrified, that's all real, didn't have to do any acting, it was great. But you know, normally in car chases you have to like look really cool and smug and like, you know, be like clenching your jaw muscles. But like you probably would be screaming and panicking, but I got to do what I was actually feeling. And after each take we'd all look at each other and be like, it was just like such an adrenaline rush each time. We had the bus that we did the bus fight in, and then they brought in a second bus, and we only got one chance at the explosion, and as is this movie, we wanted to get it in one shot, which is I'm standing on a bus, and it was a different bus, and this bus is packed with explosive materials, and I'm standing on the bus, and I look back, and I just see it's just like, you know, packed with all of this stuff, and I'm standing on it, and they were 3, 2, 1, run. And then I just run off the bus, and they run with, Sean had to run backwards at top speed while he's like on the bus at me. And we have to run back. Like if he would have run too slowly, I would have been too close to the bus and could have, and there's no way to time it. Like once they call action, the bus takes a certain amount of time to explode. That's why this movie means so much to me, is like, whether it be the bus fight and like all of the choreography and training that I had to do for that. Like I had to get so strong and in such good shape to do that. After having 2 kids, like I had to become, you know, quite muscular and strong just in order to achieve what I had to achieve on the bus fight. And the kitchen fight, the same sort of thing. You don't normally see that in movies, you know, you don't, and I think that this movie has such a realness and such a rawness to it, because like I was actually doing all of these things. And yes, I had an incredible team of stunt performers and fight choreographers and all of these other people, but they would do these things as well. But like, you know, a lot of the stuff in this movie is one take, and it's me having to do it, and like that required such strength, inner and outer, and emotional, and perseverance, and like all of us gave everything we had to this movie, like our hearts, our souls, our time, our right hand, and the whole crew was that way. Everybody was that dedicated, and you know, I think that that's You really see that from, you know, the set deck to the costume designing to the cinematography to the stunts to the fight choreography. Everything is just so authentic and full of such empathy and humanity. And I think that that's really special to see in the genre, because the movie is still beautiful and slick in its beauty, but in the storytelling, it's so authentic, and it's so unlike any movie that I've ever seen in the genre, whether it's a male or female lead. It's just you don't normally see this story told with such humanity and excitement.